When we moved into the apartment complex in Brooklyn, my dad only had one rule: never talk to the woman in 4B. He said it so casually, like he was telling me to take my shoes off. I was 17, old enough to question things, but something about his tone shut me up. I asked who she was once. He just muttered, "She doesn't belong here." The woman in 4B didn't look scary. She was pale, quiet, and always wore the same long gray sweater. Sometimes I'd pass her in the hall and she'd give me the softest smile. But whenever she saw my dad, her face would drop like she remembered something terrible. Dad would always pull me away, not saying a word. I assumed it was just some weird adult drama, maybe something from years ago. My best guess was that they dated and it ended badly, or she owed him money. I joked about it once. He didn't laugh. That night he checked the locks twice and left the hallway light on while we slept. I started noticing little things, like how her door was always closed, but the lights underneath flickered all night. My bedroom shared a wall with hers, and sometimes I'd hear soft humming through the vent. It wasn't creepy at first, more like a lullaby. But one night I realized it was the same song my mom used to sing before she passed. That unsettled me enough to bring it up. "She hums Mom's song," I told Dad, expecting him to brush it off. Instead, he turned pale and told me not to mention my mother around 4B again. "Don't let her hear you say that," he said quietly. "That's how she gets in." Gets in? That made no sense. I started keeping track. Every time I heard the humming, strange things would follow. My phone battery would drain overnight, even unplugged. The hallway light outside my door would blink 3 times exactly. Once, I woke up with my door cracked open and Dad swore he didn't do it. I became obsessed with her without meaning to. I'd listen at our wall, waiting for the humming, trying to record it. But playback always came out blank, like the sound didn't exist outside that moment. One evening, I saw her standing in the lobby, staring up at our window, motionless for nearly 10 minutes. When I told Dad, he lost it. "She's testing the boundary," he said, pulling out a strange silver charm and taping it to the inside of our peephole. "Don't open that door, no matter what." That night he slept in the chair beside our door, holding an old photograph I'd never seen before. It showed him, my mom, and the woman from 4B, all smiling in front of a lake. I didn't know what disturbed me more, the fact they knew each other, or that someone had scribbled over my mom's face in black ink. I wasn't even born in that photo. It was dated 2 years before I existed. I stared at the photo long after Dad fell asleep by the door. My mind couldn't process it. Why was she there with them? Why had he never told me? The more I stared, the more it felt like her smile was changing, like it was widening, little by little, each time I blinked. The next morning, Dad was gone. His chair was still there, the cushion dented, the charm still taped over the peephole, but no note, no sound, no phone. His phone was still charging in the kitchen. All his keys were hanging on the hook. It was like he vanished between heartbeats. Panic didn't hit me right away, just confusion. I knocked on a few doors, but no one had seen him. When I got to 4B, I froze. Her door was slightly ajar, just like the night I saw her in the lobby. A soft creaking echoed from inside, followed by that same humming, my mother's lullaby. I backed away and called the police, but they brushed it off. "Probably just stepped out for air," they said. I didn't push. Some part of me didn't want them involved. That night, I locked every door and slept with a knife under my pillow. I was starting to understand why Dad had rules. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to soft knocking, 3 slow taps, then silence. I held my breath. Another knock. I tiptoed to the door and looked through the peephole. She was there, crying. Her hands were covering her face. Then she looked up, right at me, through the peephole, as if she could see me. "Please," she whispered, barely audible. "He's in here. He said you'd come." My heart stopped. I wanted to believe it was a trick, that she was lying, trying to get me to open the door. But something in her voice, something made me pause. It wasn't a threat. It sounded like guilt. I didn't open the door, but I stayed there watching. She didn't move. She stood perfectly still for almost 10 minutes, then turned and walked back to 4B. I heard her door close, and silence returned. I didn't sleep. I sat there until sunrise, watching the door, trying not to think about what she meant. The next day, I dug through the hall closet, hoping for answers. Old boxes, paperwork, even my mom's journals. One journal had her handwriting, familiar, soft curls of ink. The last few pages were disturbing. Scribbled dates, names, drawings of a door, repeated over and over. Don't let her speak your name. Then I found something that broke me, a page torn and folded, taped shut. Inside, it simply said, "Your mother made a deal. 4B collects the debt. One child, one soul. She's here to finish what we delayed." My stomach dropped. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't even meant to be born. I sat in my room with the journal page in my hands, the words burning into my mind. One child, one soul. My mom had made a deal, and I was the price. I wanted to scream, to run, to call someone. But who would believe me? I was trapped in a story I didn't even know I belonged to. That night I heard the humming again, clearer than ever. It wasn't just a lullaby now. It carried words, whispers, phrases I couldn't fully understand. They seeped through the vents like smoke, wrapping around my room. I covered my ears, but they were already inside my head. At 3:07 a.m., the humming stopped. I held my breath. The hallway light flickered. Then came the knock. 3 slow taps. I didn't move. Another knock. I got up, not even sure why, drawn to it like I was sleepwalking. I looked through the peephole again. She wasn't alone this time. Standing behind her, holding her shoulder, was my father. His eyes were distant, like he wasn't fully there. He wasn't bleeding or bruised, but he wasn't normal. "It's okay now," the woman said. "He understands. He chose." I didn't open the door, but I pressed my hand against it, trembling. "Don't be afraid," she whispered. "It's just a trade. It always has been." My dad raised his hand to the peephole, and I saw a mark burned into his palm, a circle with an eye in the center. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. The door handle rattled once, then silence again. By morning they were gone, but something in the air had changed. It felt colder, thicker. The photo was missing. The journal too. I found a small box at our doorstep. Inside was the silver charm cracked down the middle and a new photo. Me standing alone in front of 4B smiling. I moved out 2 days later. Told the landlord my dad disappeared. He didn't seem surprised. Said people vanish in this building all the time. When I passed 4B one last time, the door was open just a crack. No lights, no sound, just a shadow on the wall that didn't match anything in the room. I've never gone back. Sometimes, though, I hear the humming in dreams. I wake up with the feeling that someone's standing just outside my bedroom door, watching, waiting. Debt doesn't vanish, I guess. It just passes on, quietly, patiently, until the next knock. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see her standing at that door, still crying, still whispering. But now I understand. She wasn't trying to hurt me, she was mourning. Because in her eyes, I had already been given up, long ago. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more horror just like this. And if you're here for the first time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon so you never miss a scare. When I got back from my business trip to Austin, my husband looked like he hadn't slept in days. He barely said hello before asking, "Why didn't you tell me you came home early last night?" I froze. I hadn't. I was on a delayed flight, still in Texas until this morning. He swore he saw me, talking to our neighbor. At first I thought he was joking, but his eyes were too serious, too hollow. "You were in the driveway with Greg. You had your hair tied up wearing that green hoodie," he said. My blood ran cold. I hadn't worn that hoodie in months. It was buried somewhere in our winter closet. He said he saw me from the upstairs window. I was facing Greg, nodding slowly while he leaned against his fence. "You didn't say much, just listened. And then you looked up at me." That part gave me chills. I had never seen my husband that unsettled before. Greg was our new neighbor, quiet, polite, single. He'd only lived there for about 3 months. I'd spoken to him twice, just casual neighborly things, nothing deep. My husband never mentioned any issues with him before, but now his whole mood had changed, like he was hiding something else. I checked our security footage, expecting to prove my innocence, but the feed was blank from 7:12 p.m. to midnight, just static. All other days recorded fine. Only that night was wiped. "That's when I saw you," my husband said. "Right around 9 o'clock, it's like it didn't want to be seen." The weirdest part was the green hoodie. I found it that evening, laid out on our bed, folded neatly. It even smelled like me, like my old perfume I hadn't worn in over a year. "I didn't put it there," my husband said. "I thought you did, but I hadn't unpacked yet." That night I kept dreaming of our backyard, I saw myself standing near the fence, my face blurred like an out-of-focus photo. The version of me didn't blink. It just stared forward while Greg's silhouette stood beside it, motionless. When I woke up, my legs were dirty like I'd walked through grass. I checked the backyard, heart pounding. Nothing looked out of place until I noticed a spot near the fence where the soil was freshly disturbed. A circular patch, maybe a foot wide. I called for my husband, but he was already outside. "Don't touch it," he said quietly. "It was glowing last night." "Glowing?" I repeated. "Like a light?" He nodded, eyes locked on the ground. "It pulsed, and then you disappeared." I didn't know what that meant, but I didn't ask. For the first time, I felt afraid of myself, afraid something was pretending to be me. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I told my boss I had the flu, but the truth was I couldn't stop watching myself on the edge of that fence. I sat by the upstairs window for hours, hoping it would all feel like a misunderstanding. But nothing ever does when you're waiting to see your own ghost. Greg was in his yard again. He didn't wave like he usually did. He just stood still with his hands in his pockets, staring at the grass between us. My husband watched him too, pretending to fix the blinds, always glancing down. "Something's wrong with him," he muttered. "He doesn't blink." I decided to confront Greg myself, needing answers or maybe just normalcy. I walked out casually, pretending to check the mail. As I turned toward his fence, he looked up and smiled, not like a friendly neighbor, but like he already knew what I'd come to ask. "You remember last night?" I said. "Of course," he replied. "You were talking to someone," I said slowly, testing him. He nodded. "She said she lived here before. She said you don't know the truth." That stopped me cold. "She?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah," Greg said. "She looked just like you, but older." That night, my husband and I barely spoke. Something about Greg's words clung to me. Older? Did he mean aged? Weathered? The idea that there might be another version of me, one that had already lived here, made my skin crawl. And worse, I felt like I was starting to believe it. I couldn't sleep. Around 3:11 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. My husband was beside me, fast asleep. I got up and followed the sound. As I turned the corner, I saw someone enter the guest room. I opened the door slowly, heart hammering. The room was empty, but the window was open. I closed the window and turned to leave, but something caught my eye, a note on the dresser. It was written in handwriting that looked just like mine. "She's not pretending. She remembers." I backed away, breath catching in my throat. I hadn't written it. I never owned that paper. In the morning, I checked my phone for any sign I was losing my mind. But instead, I found a photo I didn't take. It was from last night, of Greg and someone who looked exactly like me standing in the backyard. She was facing away, but I recognized my own necklace. I showed it to my husband, and he dropped the phone. "That's what I saw," he whispered. "That's exactly how she stood." I zoomed in and noticed something else. Greg's shadow stretched toward the fence, but hers didn't exist. No shadow, no outline, like she wasn't really standing on this earth. We didn't talk much after seeing that photo. My husband sat in silence for most of the day, checking the windows every few minutes. I stayed near the back door, watching the fence, half expecting her to return. A version of me, older, silent, standing beside a neighbor we barely knew. That evening, we made a plan to stay up. No lights, just candles and phones charged. At exactly 9 p.m., I saw Greg in the yard again, but this time, I saw her too. Same green hoodie, same height, same everything. Except her face wasn't mine. It was pale and cracked like old porcelain. She stood there motionless as Greg whispered something to her. Then she slowly turned her head toward our window. Her mouth moved. No sound came out, but I could read the word, "Help." My husband backed away. "I think she's stuck," he said, "and Greg's not who he seems." I grabbed the flashlight and headed outside before I could change my mind. My husband followed me reluctantly. As we reached the fence, Greg was gone. Only she remained, still facing our house. But when I got closer, I saw something terrible. Her eyes were mine, but they looked exhausted, ancient. "Who are you?" I asked her. She didn't speak, but tears rolled down her cheeks. She raised one hand and pointed at the soil where the glowing patch had been. I knelt down and saw something buried, barely visible. I brushed it gently. It was a small, rusted mirror. My reflection blinked before I did. I dropped it instantly. My husband pulled me back, whispering, "We're leaving. Now." But as we stepped toward the door, Greg appeared behind the woman. His smile was wide. Inhuman. "You're early," he said softly, "but she's ready. She always has been." I didn't understand until the woman lunged forward. The next few seconds were a blur. I screamed. My husband grabbed my arm and pulled me inside. The door slammed shut behind us and all the lights went out. From the peephole, we could see her banging on the glass, begging, not breaking. "She's not trying to hurt us," I whispered. "She's trapped." That night, we packed everything. I left the green hoodie on the fence post. We moved out within 2 days. Greg never said a word, and the landlord acted like nothing had happened. But sometimes in dreams, I see her, older, grayer, stuck in that backyard, still mouthing the same word, help. And once, just once, I saw her again, not in a dream. On the news, a blurred photo behind a missing persons headline, "Local woman vanishes without a trace." The date? Exactly 1 year from the night I first saw her. The woman in the photo wore my necklace and my face. I moved into this quiet Massachusetts suburb a few months after my divorce, just looking for peace. The houses were close, the lawns were sharp, and everyone waved but never talked too much, perfect for someone who wanted to be left alone. Everything was quiet, except Friday nights. Every Friday, without fail, my next-door neighbor hosted a party. The same music, the same laughter, the same glowing porch lights. I never once saw the guests arrive, but I always heard them. Their laughter would drift through my walls like smoke, strange and muffled, like it was underwater. The odd thing was, I never saw them leave either. By Saturday morning, the house would be silent again, but no cars pulled out, no doors opened. I'd check from my upstairs window just out of curiosity. The same shadows would dance behind the curtains well past 3 a.m., long after the music stopped. The neighbor himself, Mr. Kinley, seemed pleasant enough. Early 60s, polite, well-dressed, always mowing the lawn with perfect lines. He'd wave and smile, but his eyes never matched the warmth of his voice. He had the kind of face that made you feel like he already knew something about you. One Friday, out of sheer boredom, I stood on my back porch with the lights off, just watching. Around 8:15 p.m., like clockwork, the house lit up. But what caught me off guard was a group of people already standing in the yard, motionless, facing the house, as if waiting for something. They didn't talk or look around, just stood there, perfectly still, until Mr. Kinley opened the back door and gestured. They entered without a word. I strained my eyes, trying to catch faces, but the porch light was dim and flickering. Still, something about the way they moved felt off. I went back inside, locked my door, and told myself I was just being nosy. But curiosity is a hard habit to kill. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to silence, an unnatural kind. The kind that makes you sit up in bed and feel like something's watching you breathe. I looked out the window again, expecting darkness. Instead, the entire lower floor of Kinley's house was glowing red, like a furnace lit behind his walls. Shadows moved along the curtains, strange and rhythmic, like they were swaying to music I couldn't hear anymore. The red glow faded within seconds, and everything went black again. No lights, no movement. I stood there in the dark for a long time, waiting for something, anything. But the house remained still. Eventually, I crawled back into bed, unsure if I was imagining it all. By the next morning, I was convinced I had dreamt the whole thing. But when I stepped outside, I noticed something odd in Kinley's yard. The grass where the guests had stood was flattened into perfect ovals, unmoving patches like someone had pressed them there overnight. I stared for a long time. Kinley came out seconds later, cheerful as always, holding a cup of coffee like nothing happened. "Morning," he said, grinning. "Hope the music wasn't too loud." I nodded awkwardly, not knowing what to say. His shirt sleeve rode up slightly, and I noticed a red smear on his wrist. It looked like dried paint or blood. He caught me looking and pulled the sleeve down. "Working on a new sculpture," he said quickly. "Clay's messy." I nodded again, but his eyes were sharp now, watching mine too closely. That was the first time I felt like he was warning me. That day I searched online for anything about him. No social profiles, no photos, nothing. Property records showed he bought the house in 1984 and never left. No family, no spouse, no visitors logged on the neighborhood app. A ghost of a man who hosted weekly parties for guests who never left. That night I stayed up with the lights off again. I saw the glow return around 8 p.m., the same motionless crowd outside. This time, I recorded it, or tried to. When I checked the footage, the people weren't there, just the porch light turning on. The guest didn't show up on camera. I tried again from a different angle, same result. The light showed, but the yard was empty. But I saw them with my own eyes. Tall figures, shoulders stiff, arms at their sides. I started writing things down in a notebook, time-stamping everything. It felt obsessive, but I couldn't stop. One Friday night, I made a mistake. I stepped into my backyard, just a few feet beyond my porch, hoping to hear what they were saying. The crowd was there, and again, silent. But one of them turned to me, slowly, like a statue rotating. Their face was blank, not emotionless, blank. It was like a mask with skin stretched over it. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, just smooth and pale. I froze, and then one more turned, and another. They didn't move closer, just faced me. That was worse. I backed up slowly, heart racing, until I was inside again. I slammed the door and didn't sleep that night. I kept checking the window, but none of them came toward my house. I don't know if stepping out marked me somehow. But the next morning, I found a folded paper tucked into my mailbox. It simply read, "You've seen too much." I didn't call the police. What would I even say? My neighbor throws secret parties for guests who don't show up on camera, and now they're warning me? I tossed the note in a drawer and tried to act normal. But all week, I felt like something was watching me from behind the walls. By Thursday night, I'd made up my mind to leave town for the weekend. Just disappear, clear my head, maybe visit my sister. But Friday came, and something stopped me from going. A quiet pull. Like if I left now, I'd never be allowed to come back. That night, I stayed up again. Same time, same light. But this time, I didn't see the guests outside. I waited for the porch light to turn on, but it didn't. Everything was too still. I kept the window cracked open, letting the silence crawl in with the cool air. Around midnight, I heard a knock on my back door. Not the front, the back. I froze. Another knock. Then a voice, clear and calm. "I know you're awake." My heart stopped. I peeked through the kitchen window, and there he was, Mr. Kinley, smiling like he always did. "I thought you might finally join us," he said, not raising his voice. "You've earned it." I didn't answer. He placed something on my porch and walked away, vanishing into the dark like he was never there. I opened the door just an inch. On the mat was an envelope with my name. Inside was a single black card. Embossed in red were the words, "Admittance confirmed." The air around me felt heavier, colder. My fingers trembled as I turned the card over. On the back, the date read, "Tonight. No time. Just tonight." And below it, "Leave a light on." I didn't leave a light on. I locked every door, closed every blind, and sat in the middle of the living room with my phone recording. But at 2:17 a.m., every light in my house flickered on, one by one, even the ones I never used. My phone screen went black. From my window, I could see Kinley's house glowing again, brighter than ever. The kind of red that doesn't look like light. It looked like heat, like burning air. And behind the curtain, I saw silhouettes again. But now, one of them waved. The way I do. The way I wave. I don't know what I'm looking at anymore. I still live here, but sometimes I feel like I'm watching myself from somewhere else. Friday nights still come, and the porch light still glows. But lately, when I check the mirror, I don't always see myself blink when I do.